December 2016, there was a poll that was done on if the American people believed that the Russians interfered and changed our election. At that time, 32% of the people believed that the Russians had influenced the outcome of the election in December of 2016. Based on that belief and what was going on, there was launched a whole series of hearings. Certainly the Russians were trying to interfere in our elections, but we spent millions and millions of dollars investigating it, going through it, ramping up entities like CISA and others to be able to go engage, to be able to make sure we can protect our next election. Senator Klobuchar and I worked for years on election security legislation and worked to be able to get that implemented. We did 6 different public hearings on Russian interference just on that one topic to make sure that we were paying attention to it, when it all started with 32% of Americans in December of 2016 believing the Russians had interfered in our election. A few days ago, another poll asked the question, do you believe there was election and voter fraud in the presidential election between Joe Biden and Donald Trump? This December, 46% of the voters in America have said yes. 45% saying no. Interestingly enough, Trump voters say there was fraud, 80%. Biden voters also said 16% that they believe that there was voter fraud. The reason I bring that up is we watched what happened in 2016 and what the American people thought and saw, and so we engaged with hearings, we looked at the issues and determined, do things need to change? Much of the work that's gone on the last several years to be able to get paper ballots into states happened because this Congress engaged on an issue where we saw an obvious problem. And so we distributed federal dollars, assistance, and a constant drumbeat to say these states have got to fix the areas where they don't have paper ballots and we have the potential for problems. That was the question. Is there a potential for a problem? The answer was yes, there's a potential, and we ought to fix that. Now, amazingly, after this election, all kinds of issues have come up and said there are potentials for problem, and everyone seems to be saying, move on. The only reason I can think that that would be different was because the election outcome seemed to be different. And one side is now saying, let's just move on and ignore this. In my state on election night, like 27 other states in the country, by that evening, we were counting votes and all absentee ballots had been received. There was much less opportunity for accusations of fraud because all of our ballots were in. Amazingly enough, a week after the election was completed this November, Oklahomans were listening to other states that were saying things like, we don't know how many more ballots there are left to count. We had been done for a week. We and 27 other states had been completed for a week. That gives opportunities for fraud and questions and problems. That's a reasonable question to ask. It's reasonable to be able to ask if people can drift around and gather ballots from other people and do ballot harvesting, and in some states that's legal, does that provide an opportunity for fraud? I think the obvious answer is yes. The obvious answer is if you mail a ballot to everyone in the state, even if they didn't ask for it, does it provide an opportunity for fraud, especially when the state did not first purge or verify those addresses, and they sent thousands of ballots to people that no longer live there. I've talked to Nevada residents that receive multiple ballots at their home for people that no longer live there. That's a problem. And we should at least admit that's a problem. And for some reason, the other side was very focused on, we've got to fix the potential for problem from 2016. But in 2020, when there's potential for problem and things that have been shown, everyone seems to say, move along. Let's not discuss this. There's a system called the ERIC system that's in place that 30 states cooperate with. It helps them verify if people have moved and they're registered in 2 different states, or if they've moved into your state and they're registered somewhere else. It helps them determine if they're voting in 2 different states. Only 30 states use that. Other states are not. And even of the 30 states that use it, not all of them are actually using it. They literally are on the system, but they're not actually purging their rolls when they know there are people that have moved out of their states and have been informed of that. Just this last year in the ERIC system, they identified 91,000 people that are registered voters that are dead. 91,000 that one system had recognized. There are problems in the system. And in this conversation that I've had with so many people, and I've said, is it a problem that people are voting in 2 states? Is it a problem that people are voting after they're dead? And this is what I hear over and over again. This has been going on for years. So why don't we fix it? Should be the next statement. Instead, the statement seems to be, well, let's just move along. Mr. Banal, 42,000 people in Nevada voted more than once, according to your work in this. 42,000 people. 1,500 people voted in Nevada that were dead. 19,000 people voted though they did not live in Nevada, and they weren't a college student. 8,000 people voted from a non-existent address. 15,000 people voted though they were registered to a commercial address or a vacant address, and 4,000 people voted in Nevada that are non-citizens. My question to you is, in my state, when someone votes twice, and we do have that occasionally, and about 50 times a year that actually occurs in our state, we prosecute individuals that vote twice. Of this 130,000 instances that you have identified from the 2020 election in Nevada, do you know of any prosecutions currently going on in Nevada for any voter fraud?
Not yet, Senator, and that's extremely important. These laws have to be enforced. We, of course, I represent the Trump campaign and the campaign's electors. I don't represent the government. We can't bring prosecutions. But if we are going to enforce voter integrity laws, they must be enforced, and we are confident that although it often takes a long time to put together a fraud case, although it takes prosecutors months, sometimes even years, to go through subpoenas and warrants and using the FBI to go investigate these things, once a good hard look at these cases is examined, an honest look, if we do that, there should be charges brought, because the ranking member brought up in his remarks that when you lose the principle of one person, one vote, the end result is authoritarianism. That's exactly what we're saying here today.
Right, and that's a major issue. Mr. Chairman, could I ask for one additional moment? Judge Starr, you've raised twice this issue about Pennsylvania and that the laws of Pennsylvania were changed. In Oklahoma, we did State Bill 210 and State Bill 1779 because we saw with the pandemic there were going to be problems. So our legislature came into session, made a change to be able to adjust for how we were going to do early ballots and early voting. So because we knew that was the law that needed to be followed. Was that done in Pennsylvania, and does it matter who sets the law and the rules for elections?
No, it was not done, unfortunately, in Pennsylvania. The governor sought to change the law. The General Assembly of Pennsylvania had met, reviewed, and made various and sundry changes and reforms. And then the Pennsylvania Supreme Court, building what the governor had done, made additional changes. And those, in my judgment, were complete violations of the United States Constitution and flagged as such preliminarily by Justice Samuel Alito. So the Oklahoma legislature did it the right way.
Judge Starr, thank you very much. Senator.